No, Sentinel, we cannot hear you. You didn't open the microphone.
Now? Yes, okay. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another one of our webinars about the Taijimen case, co-sponsored by CESNUR and Human Rights Without Frontiers. Today's webinar celebrates one of the most important United Nations days of observance, Human Rights Day. My specialized field is the study and prevention of disasters, a matter that is very much related to human rights. In the year 2004 and 2005, an anomalous concentration of tsunamis, earthquakes, and hurricanes hit different parts of the world, particularly in the Americas and Asia. Analysis of the relief efforts by the United Nations led to the alarming conclusion that there was a human rights gap in disaster relief. The United Nations noted that not only national authorities are often unaware of the relevance of human rights norms in the context of natural disasters, international agencies and non-governmental organizations are also at a loss as to how to incorporate a human rights-based approach into emergency relief and response, even though many of the laws and codes of conduct applicable in situations of natural disaster include such guarantees. In June 2006, the United Nations Interagency Standing Committee adopted the operational guidelines on human rights and natural disasters. These guidelines, the committee stated, were needed because already existing guidelines on humanitarian action in emergencies, as well as standards for protecting human rights in armed conflict, did not deal specifically with human rights concerns emanating from natural disasters. Victims of natural disasters, according to the guidelines, are entitled to 4 categories of rights. Rights related to life, physical security, and integrity. Rights related to the basic necessity of life, other economic, social, and cultural rights, and other civil and political rights. Special attention, the guidelines emphasized, should be paid to the human rights of ethnic and religious minorities, victims of natural disasters. What normally happens in the case of a natural disaster is that the most victims are no longer able to live in their homes, which have been destroyed, and sometimes even in their villages, cities, or countries. They should move elsewhere. During these forced misplacements, they can be mistreated, robbed, and physically or sexually abused. In the immediate aftermath of a disaster, the first 2 categories of human rights mentioned by the guidelines, this is the right to life and security and the right to the basic necessity of life, should be immediately guaranteed to them. However, once they are relocated and while they wait for the possibility to return back to where they lived before the disaster, the 3rd and 4th categories of the guidelines should also apply. This is economic, social, cultural, civil, and political rights. The victims of disaster should be able to send their children to school and maintain their cultural, linguistic, ethnic, and religious identity. I am impressed by the fact that the 2006 guidelines mention freedom of religion or belief more than 30 times. These mentions include references to rights of the displaced victims of natural disasters to build places of worship, continue to respect their religion-based dietary prescriptions, and bury their dead according to their religious customs. Indeed, the guidelines call for taking religion-based human rights into account since the first stages of the relief efforts. Freedom of thought, religion, and belief may be affected in disaster situations if relief efforts are undertaken without sufficient respect for the religious traditions of affected communities, the document says. On Human Rights Day, the lesson of this document is that the right to freedom of religion or belief comes immediately after the rights to life and integrity, and should be protected even in the case of disasters or other extreme situations. It seems to me that the United Nations document contrasts with what happened to Taiji men in Taiwan. Their human rights, including rights to property and rights to freedom of religion or belief, were regarded as less important than saving the face of certain bureaucrats who had unjustly prosecuted and imposed tax bills on Taiji men and had created an unnecessary human-made disaster. If, as the 2006 guidelines proclaim, the frantic efforts to save victims of natural disaster are no excuse for violating human rights and lose sight of freedom of religion or belief, it should be even more true that no political or administrative context or need may excuse the injustice suffered by Taiji men. We are here today to proclaim that human rights and religious and spiritual freedom are universal, and there are no situations or exceptions that may excuse their violation. But we are also here to try to remedy a great human-made disaster, the persecution and tax harassment of Taiji men. Okay, before starting the first session, let's watch the videos of today's webinar. One from the United Nations Secretary General speech and one from the UN Human Rights Commission.
All human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. The iconic opening sentence of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is as important today as it was when it was adopted 75 years ago. The Universal Declaration is a roadmap helping to end wars, heal divisions, and promote lives of peace and dignity for all. But the world is losing its way. Conflicts are raging. Poverty and hunger are increasing. Inequalities are deepening. The climate crisis is a human rights crisis that is hitting the most vulnerable hardest. Authoritarianism is on the rise. Civic space is shrinking, and the media is under attack from all sides. Gender equality remains a distant dream, and women's reproductive rights are being rolled back. Today, it is more important than ever to promote and respect all human rights, social, cultural, economic, civil and political, which protect us all. The Universal Declaration shows the way to common values and approaches that can help resolve tensions and create the security and stability our world craves. As we work to update the global frameworks and make them more effective in the 21st century, human rights must have a unique and central role. I call on Member States to use this 75th anniversary and this Summit of the Future next year to strengthen their commitment to the timeless values of the Universal Declaration. And on Human Rights Day, I urge people around the world to promote and respect human rights every day for everyone, everywhere.
"75 years ago, something remarkable happened on the global stage. The world united to adopt the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. This powerful moment emerged from a turbulent era filled with wars, genocide, nuclear threats, and economic instability. Despite these challenges, nations came together to make a solemn promise to protect and advance the rights of every individual. In 1993, as the Cold War thawed and the Internet expanded rapidly, the Vienna Declaration and Programme of Action played a crucial role in reinforcing human rights principles. Both the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the Vienna Declaration have been beacons of inspiration, igniting meaningful change worldwide. Human rights have become integral to governance and decision-making. Movements like Black Lives Matter, Me Too, Fridays for Future, indigenous activism, and women's protests have empowered individuals to stand up for their rights and challenge injustice. Young people especially have embraced the language of human rights to voice their concerns, and some countries' courts have held wrongdoers accountable, even recognizing the right to a healthy environment. The idea of a human rights-based economy is gaining traction, offering a way to tackle global inequalities and aligning with the Sustainable Development Goals. Yet, human rights violations persist in many parts of the world, often without consequences. Challenges like climate change, conflict, hate speech, the shrinking space for civic engagement, and the governance of new technologies require solutions rooted in human rights principles. By embracing the universal language of human rights, a language that promises freedom, equality, and justice for all, we can overcome seemingly insurmountable challenges. Together, we have the potential to create a more peaceful and sustainable future for our planet and its people. As we celebrate the 75th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, let's remember that it's not just a historical document, but a living testament to our shared humanity, a timeless guide. Despite conflicts that may divide us, it's in the pursuit of peace, justice, and equality that we discover our common ground. Together, we can envision a future where every individual's rights are safeguarded, conflicts are resolved through dialogue, and peace prevails. Now, more than ever, it's time for human rights. Join us as part of Human Rights 75 to help ensure that every person can live in peace and dignity.
The first paper today is by Hans Not, President of the Dutch Gerard Not Foundation for Freedom of Religion or Belief. Hans was also one of the participants in the events in California last October, when we celebrated the grand opening of 2 new Taiji Men Qigong academies. Hans, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, good evening, whatever may be the case. Commemorating the adoption of the United Nations Charter of Human Rights 75 years ago gives us a chance to take stock of its effect worldwide. Over the years, this landmark document has played a crucial role in shaping the global landscape, influencing legal frameworks, fostering international cooperation, and promoting the culture of respect for human rights. The UN Charter of Human Rights serves as a cornerstone of international human rights law, providing a universal set of principles and standards. Its influence is mostly apparent in the adoption of various treaties and conventions, such as the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, the International Covenant on Economy, Social and Cultural Rights, and the European Convention of Human Rights, drafted in 1950. These instruments, rooted in the principles of the UN Charter, have become essential tools for states in shaping their domestic legislation and legal frameworks. The Charter's emphasis on education and awareness has contributed to the development of a global culture of human rights. Through educational programs, advocacy campaigns, and grassroots initiatives, the principles enshrined in the Charter have become ingrained in the collective consciousness of societies worldwide. This cultural shift has led to increased accountability and pressures on governments to align their policies with international human rights standards. It must be said, however, that the general population knows little about its contents and cares even less until they are confronted with human rights abuse. And through the principle of human rights, though the principle of human rights has ancient historical roots, with the UN Declaration of Human Rights, it has become an integral component of international diplomacy and conflict resolution. It provides a common language and a shared moral foundation that nations can leverage in diplomatic efforts. Human rights considerations often play a central role in trade negotiations, peacekeeping missions, and efforts to prevent or address humanitarian crises. The Charter's principles acts as a compass, guiding nations towards more just and equitable solutions in the face of complex global challenges. It has served as a catalyst for numerous social movements advocating for human rights across the globe. Civil rights movements, women's rights movements, LGBTQ+ rights movements, and many others have drawn inspiration from the principles enshrined in the Declaration. Activists leverage these universal rights as a powerful tool in their campaigns for justice, equity, and the protection of the vulnerable populations. Despite its undeniable positive effect, the UN Charter faces ongoing challenges as well. As we see in the world's conflicts, the number of legal human rights cases, the number of NGOs worldwide that deal with human rights abuse, much need to be done. One of the primary challenges faced by the European Court of Human Rights has been the backlog of cases, leading to delays in the resolution of disputes. The sheer volume of cases has strained the court's resources, and as a result, litigants often face lengthy waiting periods before their cases are heard. As we look to the future, the UN Charter's principles must continue to evolve to address emergent issues, such as technological advancements, climate change, and evolving notions of equality. Let me name some of the future elements that we might see in the future. Some argue, for example, that the language and concepts used in the Charter are outdated and do not adequately address contemporary human rights challenges, such as those posed by technological advancements, climate change, and the evolving notions of identity and gender. Then, some critics have pointed out that the universality of human rights principles outlined in the Charter faces resistance from some countries that argue for cultural relativism. This perspective asserts that different cultures may have distinct values and norms and therefore a one-size-fits-all approach to human rights might not be suitable. This debate has led to the challenge of in implementing certain provisions in the Charter in diverse cultural contexts. Then the Security Council's role in maintaining international peace and security can sometimes overshadow its responsibility to address human rights violations. The Council's primary focus on political and security concerns may lead to a neglect of human rights issues in favor of geopolitical considerations. And while the Charter articulates fundamental human rights principles, it lacks robust enforcement mechanisms. The UN can issue resolutions and condemnations, but it often relies on member states to voluntarily comply with human rights standards. This dependence on state cooperation can actually even hinder effective action, particularly when states are unwilling to address their human rights shortcomings. And one of the primary criticisms to the UN Charter of Human Rights is the inconsistent enforcement of its principles. Some argue that powerful nations often escape accountability of human rights violations due to their geopolitical considerations. The Security Council, with its veto power held by certain influential members, can hinder effective action against violations committed by its own members or their allies. Frankly, we have seen this a couple of days ago. And despite progress, certain vulnerable populations, such as refugees, migrants, and stateless individuals, continue to face significant challenges. The Charter's effectiveness in protecting these groups from discrimination, violence, and displacement has been questioned, highlighting the need for a more comprehensive framework specifically addressing their unique circumstances. And the Charter predominantly focuses on civil and political rights, and its treatment for economic and social and cultural rights has been criticized for being less comprehensive. Issues such as poverty, access to education and healthcare are crucial components to human rights, yet the Charter's efficacy in addressing these issues has been questioned. And lastly, among the shortcomings of the UN Charter of Human Rights, there's the fact that for well-known political reasons, Taiwan is and still cannot be a member, thus excluding 24 million Taiwanese from the UN mechanisms implementing the Universal Declaration. Taiwan did sign the two conventions in 1967, but the rest of the process ran up against various obstacles, and it has taken 42 years to complete. Then in 2009, Taiwan unilaterally incorporated the two covenants into its domestic law, namely the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. At the same time, whilst generally speaking, Taiwan does not have the worst human rights track record globally, the fact that after more than almost 27 years, the Taijimen case still has not been solved and no end in sight is remarkable, to say the least. So, since its adoption, the United Nations Charter has played a transformative role in shaping the global discourse of human rights, from influencing legal frameworks to fostering a global culture of respect and empowerment. Its impact is profound and far-reaching. As the international community grapples with contemporary challenges, the principles embedded in the Charter remain essential guidelines for creating a more just, equitable, and rights-respecting world. And yet, it is clear that this legal framework by itself is not enough to tackle the increase of human rights abuse worldwide. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hans, for your very interesting speech. The second paper is by Massimo Introvigno, an Italian sociologist who serves as managing director of CESNUR, and editor-in-chief of the daily magazine on human rights and freedom of religion, Bitter Winter. The floor is yours, Massimo.
Thank you, and greetings to all from beautiful South Africa, where I am with other friends of Taiji men such as Rosita Sciorite, Eric Crew, Peter Zörer, and Alex Amicarelli. Human Rights Day is also a day to reflect on challenges to the notion of human rights. Some people disagree with the notion of rights, stating that the rights mentioned in the Universal Declaration are not really human rights for all humans, but are the rights of the Westerners, of the Americans. They will not apply to Russians or Chinese or Muslim. And of course, this is a very convenient argument for totalitarian regimes that do not like to respect human rights. But also there are others that challenge in human rights the word human, saying there are no human rights, there are rights of living beings, including animals. And as there are racists who will say that only the whites have human rights, those who say that only humans have rights, but not cats or chickens or hippos, they will be guilty of a new form of racism for which they have coined a new word, speciesism, and they regard speciesism as a very dangerous form of racism. Actually, that animals have rights is a very old theory, and one that was developed in Eastern religions with good reasons, because Eastern religions believe, or some of them, that human beings can reincarnate in animals. And so naturally, they will protect the right of the animals, sometime in a very strict way. For instance, monks of Jainism, which is an ancient religion of India, if you meet them, they go around with the same masks we all became familiar with for COVID, and they do it to avoid inadvertently inhaling and killing insects. And more or less, everybody today agree that animal rights are a noble cause. The Theosophical Society started promoting them in the 19th century because it was interested in Eastern religion, but even the Catholic Church and Pope Francis now say they agree with animal rights. And all of us agree that hippos, and I have seen quite a few in South Africa, or leopards or lions should not be killed just because some hunters want a new trophy. And in Italy, there was some years ago a movie, Io sto con gli ippopotami, I am for the hippopotamus, that was very popular, and the heroes protected the hippos against the poachers. But the question is more tricky than you may believe, because we all love the hippos, but how many of us do love mosquitoes? Mosquitoes are not only a nuisance because they bite us, mosquitoes carry dengue and Zika, sorry, and malaria, and they kill 750,000 human beings per year. The second most lethal creature, human beings, only killed some 400,000 with their murders and wars. So what about mosquitoes? Today, there are projects sponsored by the World Health Organization trying to eradicate the mosquitoes, or at least the most lethal, species of mosquitoes by making the male mosquitoes incapable of fecundating the female. But there are animal rights activists, for example, one very famous in the UK, Melanie Challenger, who tries to boycott this research on mosquitoes in the name, she says, of the sanctity of life. She says if we start destroying one species, who will be next? And perhaps some human races we will be next. And there are radical so-called deep ecologists who go one step further and say the human beings are the worst species on the planet, and they are a cancer or a tumor for Earth. Earth and the animals will be better off without human beings. And one of these deep ecologists, the late David Foreman, went into trouble because when there was a big number of epidemics and famines in Africa, say, let's not do anything. Let's nature kill as many humans as possible. That's nature's way of protecting the animals and itself. But this is wrong because it doesn't take into account that human beings are also part of the ecosystem and of biodiversity and necessary part. So, in conclusion, do animals have a right? I believe the answer is yes, and we should acknowledge and honor the contribution of Eastern religions in leading us to this answer. But do animals have exactly the same rights as humans? I believe the answer is no. I applaud the very strict laws of the countries where I am, South Africa, to stop poaching and destroying animals such as rhinos or leopards. But I also applaud the research to eradicate the certain species of mosquitoes as saving millions of children who die before age 5 every year or every 2 years because the mosquitoes carry dengue and Zika and malaria. And there is a reason for this, which is very important and leads us to Taiji men. Animals cannot have the same rights as humans because both animals and humans are part of the ecosystem and biodiversity, but only humans understand the importance of biodiversity. They may damage it very seriously, but they may also protect it. And no animal is capable of a reflection on biodiversity and ecology, but we are. And the reason we have different rights from animals is what Dr. Hong and the Taiji men preach about every day, that humans have a conscience. And the conscience is a moral compass enabling us to understand the good and to understand evil, including ecological evil. And this conscience is the foundation of human rights. And for this, we should all be very grateful to Dr. Hong and Taiji men. Those who preach the primacy of conscience serve powerful interest because they offer the best foundation for human rights, and not everybody likes to respect human rights. And that explains why Dr. Hong and Taiji men have been consistently persecuted and harassed and discriminated against, including through taxes. So we should resist and reject any attempt to disparage human rights. Human rights do exist. Human rights are rights. Human rights are human. Humans have human rights because they have a conscience, and the best enemies of human rights are those who deny the importance of conscience, which also means that the best friends of human rights are those who affirm the primacy of conscience. And among the best friends, we should include and honor Taiji Men and Dr. Rong, and we should applaud them, support them, and uphold their rights against injustice. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of this webinar.
Thank you very much, Massimo. Your speech were very, very interesting. Professor Introvign's speech concluded the first session. It is now my pleasure to pass the podium to Willy Fautré, co-founder and director of Human Rights Without Frontiers, the organization that co-sponsors this webinar. Willy will chair the second session. The floor is yours, Willy.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this introduction to the usual session 2 devoted to the dizzy and their testimonies about the topic of the day. But I think first that we will have a video, and afterwards I will have my introduction to the disease.
The auction process has been legally concluded.
I saw a strip of shadow in his eyes. I think that might have a goblin.
If based on the look in your eyes, a prosecutor can decide whether to prosecute you or not, then there will be no peace in Taiwan.
Where the indictment is unacceptable. If the tax authority uses this indictment as the basis for taxation, I think it is questionable.
The code doesn't come. The code doesn't come. The code doesn't come.
Taijimen indeed is not a cram school.
It has been confirmed that the money involved is a gift rather than income. So there is no issue of income tax.
You can go to the website of the Control Yuan to see that I have issued 7 corrections. For each correction, the NTB said, we made a mistake.
Taijimen once again won the case. Even the control yuan decided that Taijimen is innocent. I can't think of any other course of action in our country's legal system can be taken to solve the case.
The administrative agencies exercise administrative discretion. They have to ensure that people's human rights on taxation are protected.
The whole judicial system has proved Taijimen innocent. There's no way the investigation by the tax agencies is clearer than that by the judicial department.
Has wasted too much time and resource. This is very serious, and it has shaken the 5 branches of government and the foundation of the nation.
Calling on a taxation bureau to revoke its illegal tax bills. You just ignore them. Hey, you think you're above us? You ignore courts, the control yuan, and even the legislative yuan. You really think you're the boss?
We request that the Ministry of Finance conclude this case in 2 months.
Gifts in nature. The others all say gifts too. Let the NTB of the Central Area submit the report to the Ministry of Finance. Okay, we'll do as the Deputy Minister says. Revoke it? Okay, area will report to the Ministry of Finance.
Between 1966 and 1990, Taijimen had no tax problems. From 1997 to this day, Taijimen has had no tax problems either. Why did you impose taxes on Taijimen only for 1991 to 1996?
thousands of people surround the auction site in Miaoli. The people still sat and wait to defend the land. The Taijimen case, in which over 10,000 people have been victimized, has lasted for 24 years. But the enforcement agency still wanted to auction the land of Taijimen to pay back a wrong tax bill when Taijimen was found not guilty of tax evasion by the court 13 years ago.
Since it is a problematic judgment, the enforcement agency should not have executed it. So why did they execute it? Why? It's a question of bonuses. When the Taijimen case was handled like this, will ordinary people encounter the same problem? Definitely.
Search was conducted on December 19, 1996. He said that there was tax evasion. The income tax in 1996 cannot be audited until April 1997. They had not yet filed their taxes. How could you investigate tax evasion? How do you know how they will file their tax return? Therefore, the tax years involved in the case clearly showed that this violated the tax law. During the search on December 19, 1996, two bank statements show the balance of $22,000. However, the next day, a newspaper published that the master of Taijimen had $110 million income from fraudulent acts and cram school tuition. You can't make such an inference even when you are writing a novel. The so-called evidence obtained after the search can be proved to be false, because you already said the amount. The transcripts and testimony. When were they done? Definitely after December 20th. Could I know how much tax you have evaded the minute I am assigned to the case when auditing taxes? It's more than illegal taxation. It's the so-called framing. $22,000 was blown up to be $110 million. Then this is all imagined. It's very clear in the Taijimen tax case that the tax officers and taxation bureau imposed illegal taxes. Imposing taxes based on imaginary data is absolutely against the principle that taxes should be imposed according to the law.
Well, a very good summary of the Taijimen case as an introduction to the context of this special day devoted to the 75th anniversary of the International Human Rights Declaration. That's on the 10th of December 1948 that 50 united in their adoption of the Universal Declaration. This important document and commitment established fundamental rights and freedoms for all into international law, including the right to equal justice, equal opportunity, and equal dignity. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights is the bedrock of all international human rights treaties and the European Convention on Human Rights that we now value today. Human rights transcend borders and cultures. They are inherent to every individual human being without any distinction. While substantial progress has been achieved over the past 75 years, crises continue to multiply, and too often it is women, children, and persons in vulnerable situations bearing the heaviest burden of the consequences of war and conflict. As we celebrate human rights, we must reflect on how we should not take them for granted. Conflicts around the world demonstrate why we should cherish the human rights framework we have and make clear that human rights are for everybody. Human rights are not mere words on paper. They are universally applicable legal norms. They are the foundation of peace and the avenue towards a more just, equal, and inclusive society for today, tomorrow, and generations to come. Respecting, protecting, and fulfilling human rights is essential for fostering justice and accountability and to end impunity. This is one of the founding values and principles of the European institutions as well. Human rights are written into the DNA of the European Union, but there's a lot to do to improve them. And we should not teach lessons to others without putting our own house in order. The Universal Declaration laid the foundation for our global human rights system, as well as national laws and international treaties protecting and promoting human rights, including the European Convention on Human Rights, but also the supranational judicial mechanisms, such as the European Court of Human Rights or the Inter-American Court of Human Rights. In December, there is another important date that is not commemorated as a day of hope in Taiwan, but that is remembered as a day of sadness by Taijimen and the Dizzy. It is the 19th of December, that fateful day in 1996, when prosecutor Quan Renhu, after perniciously accusing Taijimen and Dr. Hong of tax evasion, led hundreds of armed police officers to search all chapters of Taijimen Qigong Academy, as well as the private residences of several Taijimen Dizzy. This is when a long series of human rights violations started to hit Taijimen, have never stopped fighting for justice. The Dizzy are human rights defenders, and they should also be honored this year. Indeed, this year, together with the 75th year of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, we also mark the 5th year of the Declaration on Human Rights Defenders, acknowledging their crucial role as actors of positive change, working for the promotion and revision of human rights. The fight of the Dizzy is invaluable for human rights, and I will now give them the floor to share their thoughts with us about the topic of the day. And the first one will be Shi Chung-woo, Vice President of Medical Equipment Manufacturer. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Willie. I would like to present to you the current situation of human rights in Taiwan and ask you to help Taiwan to improve its human rights level. Well, modern Taiwan is recognized as a developed country economically. However, Taiwan still has a lot to learn in human rights issue because some bad habits of the authoritarian era is still dominating. Let's see the first slide. The two regime of Jiang Jieshi and his son Jiang Jingguo maintained their dictatorship by three measures. The first was to monopolize the media, and the second was to crack down on corruption to maintain economic efficiency. And the third, the most horrible one, was to use the criminal charge of communist spy to suppress opponents. The anti-spy law ruled that all captured spies were executed, all their property were seized, of which 30% were given to the whistleblower as bonus. Bonus had made several 100,000 fake spies. All of them were executed, but none of them was real because all the real spies were captured before the anti-spy law. Although these three measures have brought Taiwan economic progress, Taiwan, however, has no human right, like Spain under Francisco Franco's rule. Please, second slide. Okay. In the later years of Jiang Jingguo, there were three bloody murder cases and the 10th credit union malpractice case. There were tragic results of collective corruption caused by the abuse of power. Jiang Jingguo lived martial law in 1987 and died in early 1988. After 8 years of turmoil, Taiwan finally elected the president in 1996. However, this is not the completion of democracy, but only the beginning. Many officials enjoy the privileges of the authoritarian period, a kind of power that is unchecked and has no basis of law. It's a gift sent to the officials to consolidate a dictatorship. That's why the three bloody murders and malpractice case happened. Similar cases continue to occur even after the end of martial law. Third slide, please. The ugliest case was the religious smash campaign launched in the end of 1996 by the Minister of Justice Liao Zhenghao. In the spring of 1996, Li Denghui and Lian Zhan were elected as president and vice president. At this time, Liao Zhenghao claimed that some religious groups were suspect of fraud, tax evasion, and other crimes. Prosecutor Hou Kuanren searched and arrested through illegal, rude, and terrorist means, and mobilized the media to exaggerate the slander. What they did was the same as the Nazi party's crystal nut. At that time, few people found that the religious groups being searched happened to have supported Li Denghui and Lian Zhan, because a martial arts and a spiritual group that had never been involved in political activities, Taijimen, was also prosecuted for no reason. This was Liao Zhenghao's deception trick. Fortunately, Liao's trick was not perfect. Hou Kuanren's indictment was found to be full of fabricated lies by all judges, and the Taijimen was sentenced not guilty at all. So were other religious groups. However, the National Tax Bureau still issued fake tax bills based on Hou Kuanren's fabricated indictment to obtain bonuses. Excuse me. 27 years after the so-called religious smash, the religious smash is obviously proved to be religious smear. Fourth slide, please. Innocent people as human rights have been deprived. Furthermore, a former finance minister Zhang Shenghe claimed that, hey, to maintain integrity, a bonus is a must. And his successor Xu Yuzhe claimed that no tax is collected with human rights. However, their predecessor Wang Jianxuan said that the bonuses is not appropriate. Excuse me. Zhang Shenghe and Xu Yuzhe were trying to use the Taijimen case to intimidate the people to obtain privileges, just like the officials during the martial law period. This kind of abuse of power violates the Constitution and the laws. Fifth slide, please. The author of the Constitution, Dr. Zhang, is one of the co-drafters of the Charter of the United Nations. Therefore, Chapter 2 of the Constitution is very similar to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Unfortunately, just a few months after the Constitution was implemented, it was suspended and then martial law ruled. Excuse me. During the martial law period, some officials tried their best to abuse their power for personal interest. That is corruption. Just like historian Sir John Acton said, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Even after the martial law was lifted, they are still holding their privileges. Zhang Shenghe and Xu Yuzhe and their subordinates formed a so-called finance tax gang to dominate Taiwan's financial policy, thus that the National Tax Bureau can even ignore the decision of the courts, and the Congress is just like a tail wagging the dog, such that there is no financial, physical discipline at all in Taiwan. Sixth slide, please. Okay, excuse me. Although the government had legalized the two United Nations covenants on human rights and the Convention of Anti-Corruption, some officials still seize Taijimen's holy land for self-cultivation because they could get bonuses. Actually, they did get bonuses. This is not an isolated case. It is the result of structural corruption. Not only the officials that issue fake tax bills can get bonuses, but also the officials of the administrative enforcement agency and even judges of the administrative courts. The bonuses have been from the overtaxed people for a very, very long time. And it shows that there is no human right in Taiwan. Seventh slide, please. Bonuses has become a clear and present danger. As Abraham Lincoln said, nations die from internal rottenness. Now it's time for us to work together to save Taiwan from corruption. Taiwan has laws to protect human rights, but they are not really implemented. Why? It's only 36 years since martial law lifted. The public do not understand human rights and then are deceived by a few officials. However, like Lincoln said, you cannot fool all the people all the time. Please, the 8th slide. Right now, there are volunteer groups in Taiwan that have been promoting legal and tax knowledge for a very, very long time, such as returning excessive levy to the people, which was confirmed by the public in the legislative election at the beginning of this year. Now, I would like to ask all of the distinguished guests today to help Taiwan spread the concept of human rights all over Taiwan so that human rights can be as free as air to be breathed in without special efforts. I hope that Taiwan's experience in fighting for human rights can be shared with the world and inspire other people who are fighting as well. I wish that everyone in the world could enjoy human rights. Okay, thank you, Willie. That's the end of my talk. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chee-Chung Wu, for your class, because really it was a class about the modern history of Taiwan and also the history of the Taijimen case and how they are both intertwined. It was quite detailed and well articulated, very informative. And as you said, although martial law was 6 years ago, it took time for democracy to start emerging from that sort of dictatorial society. The habits of the authoritarian era persisted in the minds and the practices of the state institutions, as it took 9 more years before they could finally be to choose a president. That was in 1996 when the Taijimen case started. Authoritarian and non-democratic behaviors were then still dominating in the minds of the people, having privileges, and some institutions like the National Tax Bureau that could abuse their power. The march to democracy is usually a long march, and the march to justice for Taijimen will also be, is already, and will also be a long march. Thank you really for your contribution to this webinar. And now I will introduce the second dizzy, Emma Chen, who is a dentist. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Willie. Hello, my name is Emma Chen, and I work as a dentist in Taiwan. Today marks the 75th anniversary of one of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. This landmark document ensuring the inherent rights that everyone is entitled to as a human being, regardless of race, color, religion, sex, languages, political or other opinion, national or social opinion, property, birth, or other status. The theme for this year is freedom, equality, and justice for all. However, on the special day, I would like to tell a heartbreaking story of human rights persecution involving myself, my family, and my dear 师父, 师母. I am 太极门弟子. The 28th anniversary of the Taijimen case will be observed in 9 days, implying that the human rights persecution of Taijimen, 师父, and 弟子 is approaching its 28th years and is still ongoing. My father brought my family to Taijimen 29 years ago after seeing a co-worker grow happier and healthier as a result of Taijimen Qigong practice. Over 30 members of my family are 弟子, spanning 4 generations. 师父 is like my father, and Taijimen is my second home. However, in August of 2020, Taiwan's Administrative Enforcement Agency wrongfully took our land. Prosecutor Ho Kuan-ren accused my 师父 of unlawful tax evasion in 1996, which is where it all began. My Shifu and Shimu suffered as a result of host abuse, indictment, and unlawful detention. Shi Yuesheng, a tax official who has worked to assist Hou Kuanren by committing perjury, told a friend before his death that he had left a confession that could only be made public after his death, in which he directly accused Hou Kuanren, who made the charge of raising goblins against Taijimen, of being the person that led the fabrication of fake evidence. Legislators Tian Qiujing questioned Minister of Zheng Yongfu, stating that when a prosecutor can accuse someone of committing a crime by looking in that person's eyes, Taiwan will never be at peace. Despite of the fact that the Control Yuan investigated Hou Kuanren's handling of the Taijimen case and had 8 major violations of the law, and the Control Yuan demanded the Ministry of Justice to take serious punishment action against Hou Kuanren. Hou has still been promoting again and again. A prosecutor who claimed raising goblins was promoted to a director of the Institute of Forensic Medicine, a post that required scientific evidence to verify a fact. That is the greatest disgrace to the democratic rule of law. In 2007, Taiwan Supreme Court found Taijimen not guilty of tax evasion or any other charges. Taijimen didn't owe any tax, and the defendants who were detained all received national compensation for unlawful detention. Even in the face of human rights violation by rogue bureaucrats, we never stopped practicing love and peace. In 2014, Taijimen Qigong Academy and the World Peace Federation jointly launched the International Public Service Champion, an era of conscience, hoping that the world citizen will cross the barrier of race, cultural, and national boundaries and gather more prayers to balance the global environment. Dr. Hong inspired our Dizi to collaborate with numerous UN embassies, eventually leading to the establishment of an International Day of Conscience in 2019. Sometimes people wonder, is it possible to achieve love and peace? Perhaps some of you have a similar question. My Shifu directs us to respond to this question in action. I follow my Shifu and work together with Taijimen brothers and sisters to promote love, peace, and conscience through cultural exchanges in Taiwan and around the world. For example, I participated in 27 Summer University. For 2 whole months, we practiced in an extremely high temperature under the sun, wearing the multi-layer long sleeve costume. It was hot and exhausting, but I honestly believe that world peace could be achieved when everyone's heart comes together to make the world a better place. I hear the crowd cheering at the end of our performances. That was the exact moment I realized how close to love, peace, and conscience were to us. We have never accepted any public donations, and we have self-funded trips to 103 nations and presented over 3,000 cultural performances at home and abroad. To date, 530 world leaders were head of state and government had rung the bell of world peace and love, representing 139 nations, including 60 heads of state and 9 Nobel Peace Prize recipients. And many of these presidents have already accomplished their peace desire by taking the initiative to negotiate between the three Central American nations, Colombia, Ecuador, and Venezuela. In March 2008, Dominican President Fernandez also fulfilled on his promise of peace, thereby presenting a worse situation and thousands of casualties. As we approach the 28th anniversary of Taijiman's human rights persecution, we have remained committed to promoting religious freedom and human rights protection, and we continue to aggressively fight for victims of tax violations. Every religious or spiritual groups, like the Taijiman in Taiwan, has its own set of values, truth, and meanings. No one, not a Taiwanese government official, not you, not me, or any other citizen of the globe, should dismiss the Taijiman case. Thank you.
And thank you, Emma, for your testimony and contribution to this debate. And thank you for reminding us of another anniversary, the 28th anniversary of the abusive crackdown on Taijiman, the illegitimate arrest and imprisonment of your Shifu and Shimu. That was 9 days after the celebration of the UN Human Rights Day in that year. Really a cruel irony. 1 year before, your father had brought your family to Taijiman, and thanks to his charisma, he brought over 30 members of your family of 4 generations to Taijiman. This is clear evidence that the teachings of Dr. Hong cross the borders of age, as they cross the borders of all the countries in the world where the disease have spread and go on spreading his message of peace and love. And now I will give the floor to Patrick Young, IP Company Director. The floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. This is Patrick. Today is United Nations International Human Rights Day. In 2009, the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights and the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights were incorporated into Taiwan domestic law. It would be a good thing for Taiwan government using United Nations standard on human rights protection. However, whether this spirit can be put into practice is even more desirable to the people. On this August 14 to 18, I participated in the Parliament of the World Religions in Chicago with the Taijiman Cultural Goodwill Delegation. The theme of this year was a call to conscience, defending freedom and human rights. One of the things that touched my heart deeply was the forum hosted by Dr. Massimo Introvigne, entitled Taijiman Journey, a fight for conscience and justice, on the morning of August 15. In this forum, there were 2 speakers' opinions resonate with me a lot. The first one was Mrs. Rosita Sorate, a member of the European Alliance for Freedom of Belief. He referenced various Chinese Taoist classics to demonstrate Taoist cosmology and how Qigong practice may enhance the physical and the mental health. From the word and the deeds of Taijiman Zhangmenren Dr. Hong Daozi, she believed that Dr. Hong is the successor of such a Taoist wisdom passing through thousands of years in China. However, some ruling authorities who are afraid of Taijiman's influence to the election had used public power to suppress the development of Taijiman as well as the cultural treasure that have been passed down so hard. Another speaker was Dr. Introvium himself. He mentioned that while some philosophical thoughts in recent time has challenged the existence of conscience, Dr. Hong stated clearly, conscience is innate and is tightly linked to our life. For example, when buying something, the clerk gives you extra change. You choose to return the money to him. This is called conscience. When you accidentally shatter a bowl at home, you apologize to your mother. This is also a matter of conscience. Conscience makes you sad when your family members are sick. Conscience makes you feel sorry for the victim of war and earthquakes. Massimo further pointed out that Dr. Hong's contribution to the world is to simplify the conscience and the philosophy of yin and yang, such a profound wisdom, understandable and can be practiced in our daily life to achieve physical and mental health. I am one of the beneficiaries from Dr. Hong's teaching. I recall having very little confidence in myself. Before I became a Taijimen Dizi, I was always focused on what I didn't do well at work and put a lot of pressure on myself. As a result, I become more and more unhappy. Moreover, I have been suffering from insomnia and stomachache for quite a long time. Dr. Hong advised me to love myself, encourage myself, and take it easy to let go my worry. By practicing Qigong, I was able to relax and calm down myself. Then I found the root cause of all this trouble was my self-denying. Then my mood improved as I learned how to love and affirm myself. I got rid of my poker face, not only increased my productivity at work, the problem of insomnia and stomachache also disappeared unconsciously. Dr. Hong simplifies and makes practical of the philosophy of yin and yang. While instructing us to affirm ourselves, he also encouraged us in self-reflection. Affirmation and reflection are the two applications of yin and yang. We can only be healthy and progress when yin and yang are in balance. He also stated that we must learn to distinguish between true and false, good and bad, as well as right and wrong. These are all the philosophy of yin and yang. As we can see, when we listen to our conscience, we can find out what is true, good, and right, and choose the right path in daily life. I am so grateful to Dr. Hong's inspiration. Standing on the shoulder of the giant allowed me to see higher and further, and to do many good deeds that I could never achieve by myself. I still remember when the 9/21 earthquake struck Taiwan in 1999. Dr. Hong issued Love of the World, a Declaration of Peace on September 25th of that year, and started love and peace cultural exchange, as well as promoting an era of conscience movement around the world by combining Taoist philosophy and the Qigong martial arts. I was grateful to visiting more than 20 countries with Dr. Hong. Not only did I appreciate the merit of different cultures, but I also feel the importance of promoting an era of conscience movement when I visited war-torn area that could not be restored. Back in 1999, I couldn't have predicted what the positive energy we had spread would turn out to be. However, when we saw the United Nations declare April 5th as the International Day of Conscience in 2019, the Parliament of World Religions in Chicago made a call for conscience the theme of this year. I feel that the butterfly effect of awakening conscience is gradually fermenting. Of course, there is still a long way to go before reaching our goal. So we need to work together and keep up the struggle. Finally, I want to express that the insistence on redressing the Taijimen force case is also the inevitable result of conscience. Because of my progress in body and mind, I choose to continue practicing Taijimen Qigong and struggle to redressing Taijimen force case till now. By the way, we don't want Taiwan to have another victim of state violence. Therefore, we must continue to speak out, gather more voice of justice, and guide the country toward a people-oriented system. We also hope that these government officials who had made mistakes will repent in time. There is a saying, knowing the mistakes and correcting them is the greatest good deed. Only by sincerely correction and asking for forgiveness can one have a chance to redeem one's soul. Thank you all.
And thank you, Patrick Yang, for explaining us to what extent the practice of Qigong was really beneficial to you in your personal life. You saw your lack of confidence in yourself, you got rid of insomnia and stomach ache, you started to love yourself, to have calmed down your mind, to stop worrying about small, unimportant things, and to increase your productivity at work, as you said. Really a powerful testimony also about the power of Qigong in your life and the lives of many other diseases. Thank you very much. And now I will give the floor to Luna Ho, an elementary school teacher. The floor is yours. We are your students.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Today is International Human Rights Day, and it's also the 75th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Human rights is not given by the others, but by God. And also, no one can infringe on the human rights of others. The root cause of wars and plunder in the world today is that we don't respect the human rights of other people. I think many of those who start wars are also people of faith. Why would people who has faith kill others and render more sinful karma for self? It's because people don't really learn from the God's role model, which is to love the world. My Shifu, Dr. Hong Daozi, the Zhangman Ren of Taiji Man, taught me to truly love myself, and only then can I truly love others. Sorry. I didn't know how to truly love myself before. Now, looking back, I feel very regretful. I think those who introduce wars and violate other people's human rights don't understand what it means about truly love myself and others. Shifu taught me to distinguish between true and false, good and bad, right and wrong. Therefore, despite Taiji men suffered dual persecution from judiciary and taxis in 1996, Shifu always insisted on doing the right thing and never gave up. In fact, no criminal evidence was found from the beginning to the end of this case. The Taiji man case was completely fabricated. The criminal evidence was fabricated. The victim was also fake, and the amount of bank accounts was fake. The witnesses were false. The information published by the media was false, and the tax bill was also illegally issued with forged amounts. in order to rob 师父师母 of their essence. Even the dates on official documents were falsified. The first, second, and the third trials of the criminal court and the Supreme Court all ruled in favor of Taiji men, confirming that Taiji men didn't have any criminal or tax problems. The Counter-Yuan also found many illegal evidence of prosecutor Hou Kuanren and the officials of the National Taxation Bureau. Taiji men had won 18 times in the process of relief, but in the end, the place in Miaoli that was intended to be a conservation center was illegally auctioned off by rogue officers and illegally nationalized. When 师父, 师母, and brothers and sisters were illegally detained in the detention center by prosecutor Hou Kuanren, we tried every means to solve the matter, but 师父 asked the lawyer to convey the message, asking us to be patient, be wise, be forbearing, and be peaceful. All the brothers and sisters learned 师父's instructions and abide the laws. Taiji men has been invited by the government to participate in National Day performances 10 times and attended 8 times. There was the time when we were waiting under the burning sun and rehearsing sincerely for the national celebration. We also received a notice that the academies would be closed down. There were times when the administrative court was about to convene and announce its rulings. 师父 still kept his promise and lent his deeds aboard to promote love and peace in the world. A very serious problem in Taiwan's tax system is that officials are tempted to issue false tax bills indiscriminately in order to gain bonuses. Because the people cannot fight against this criminal structure, they can only cooperate with the tax officers. Some people cry secretly. Some companies close down. Families are broken up and even commit suicide. However, even Taiji men is faced with the closure of the academy, misunderstanding by the public, deprivation of property and personal freedom. We always insisted on uncompromising, not because we are unable to pay, but because once we compromised and paid, it means we admit that Taiji men is a cram school, which undermines orthodoxy and encourages the NTB to continue using illegal measures to harm the human rights of Taiwanese. In the face of this evil and the huge state criminal structure, which has lasted for 27 years, 师父 continues to let his deeds to help the world to realize justice, truth, and true love. This year, I participated in the IRF International Religious Freedom Summit, the 4th of July parade in Southern California, the World Conferences of Mayors in New Orleans, and the World Congress of Religious in Chicago to promote a culture of conscience and love and peace. 师父 was awarded the Love and Peace Award by the World Conference of Mayors, becoming the first recipient. The culture, performance of Taiji men, and the ceremony of ringing the bell of world peace and love moved many people deeply. Clinton, Alabama Mayor Kathy Thomas said, "It doesn't matter which race or country we come from. What matters is that we can all live in love and peace. We just need to come together and we regard each other as human beings and as people created by God. Starting from this image, we love each other." In a parade in Chicago, I played the role of Hishanu, one of the characters of 8 Immortals of China. I held the lotus flower to share the pure energy and guide others to cultivate their minds and nature. I kept sending good thoughts out with the good energy. Many people met me along the way. They gave me sincere and touching expressions. Although we didn't know each other, from the contact of our eyes, our hearts had got together. In the journey of following Shifu to learn to love others, I also learned to love myself, and my temper changed. I've learned a lot. I have a bigger heart, and I've become happier. At the end, I sincerely hope that everyone will be inspired by their conscience, grow in wisdom, and become more courageous, and that love and peace will be with the world. Thank you all.
Yeah, and thank you, Luna Ho, for focusing about the main root of wars which are now raging in the world, as it is the case in the Middle East, for example. The main reason, you said, is the lack of respect of human rights of some categories of people. This then generates collective frustration, anger, and a feeling of revenge. And this automatically leads to violence. Unfortunately, violence also comes from people of faith killing each other, other people of faith, although their God tells them to love and assist all. Unfortunately, such people remain deaf to. It's good to remind them, all the people around you, that it is important to listen to the problems of other people. And now I will give the floor to Lina Chang, elementary school substitute teacher. And again, we will be your pupils, your young pupils.
Hello. Hello, this is Lena. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Okay. Yes, yeah.
Yeah. I'll try it again. This is Lena, and I'm honored to participate in the International Human Rights Day webinar today. International Human Rights Day is an important reminder that we value the foundation rights of every human being. International Human Rights Day is also a time for us to review the progress of human rights and think about future challenges. In this context, I would like to share a fact case of Taiji Code 228, incident of the text Roman by experts and scholars. This case not only concerned the rights and interests of individuals, but also reflects the delicate relationship between the rule of law, culture, religion, and human rights. First of all, we should clearly know that Taijimen is not a cram school, but a martial arts and self-cultivation Menpai with a long history and profound culture. The law of Republic of China stipulate that Qigong is a folk skill and cannot set up cram schools according to law. However, the National Taxation Bureau still uses the name of cram schools to levy tax on Taijimen Qigong Academy, which is fundamentally illegal. This fact is crucial to understanding the Taijimen human rights participation case. Taijimen is not a cram school, and this is misunderstanding should be included in the correction of public perception. In addition, this misunderstanding results in a series of unfair treatment. The core issue in the Taijimen human rights prosecution case in the judicial system, improper treatment of the Menpai. It also shows the shortcoming of the judicial system and emphasize our need for fair judicial system. After the lifting of Menpai law, the martial law, Taiwan's judicial system may have been reformed, but officials still have not prioritized human rights as a thorough condition. For example, many of the cases investigated by prosecutor Ho Kuan-ren show no concept of human rights at all. And their style of abusing the people is really outrageous. Prosecutor Ho Kuan-ren abused his power when handling the Taijimen case. In 2002, the Contrarian took the initiative to investigate him for 8 major violations, including violations of non-disclosure of investigation, illegal search and freezing of assets, overstepping of authority, and ordering country and city governments to steal down various academies, violating scientific holding of cases and harming the public prosecutor's image and impartial law enforcement. It was transferred to the Ministry of Justice for strict investigation and punishment. It was also determined that the indictment was inconsistent with the evidence, so the prosecution based on it was consistent with the rules of evidence. The case of human rights prosecution in Taijimen was dismissed without evidence. In addition to persecution of abuse of power, illegal officials have used public power to frame and persecute people for the sake of performance and bonus. It is going to have lasted for about 28 years. The members of Culturian have also asked the Ministry of Justice to strictly investigate and punish him. Brazilian, the Ministry of Justice not only do not punish him, but deliberately delay if technically exceeding the statute of limitations for clever servant punishment, and shielded prosecutor Ho Kuan-ren from being punished. The board Controlling had no choice but to emphasize the executive and criticism of the Ministry of Justice for the risk of the conflict setting with the correct five-power constitutional system, and its failure to clearly handle the case in accordance with authority, resulting in the delay of punishment cases for many years, which greatly undermines the credibility of procedural agents. Failure to punish those who should be punished is so encourage officials to abuse their power. In other words, judicial prestige is gone. Prosecutor Ho Kwon-yeon violated the law and abused his power, but named himself detective. He handles cases like a mythological tale. He solves cases with his eyes and writes his strange power and confuse into the indictment. The discriminant prosecution without inventive means that he often uses the media to handle cases in a shocking way, leaving the people in an upset of pain. For example, the Jorenshan case, Union Westland case, caused so many families to be broken up and killed. Some to lose their office, some to lose their jobs, and some to lose their wives and children. There are countless tragedies in the world. Fortunately, on July 13th, 2007, a conscientious judges of the Criminal Division of the Supreme Court found Dr. Hong and his co-defendants not guilty of fraud or tax evasion. It was determined that the mortuary gift was just a gift and was classified as tax-free income. It was also determined that the mutual aid agency between Dizi was not non-profit sale. There were no tax issue. In 2009, all inconsent defendant is totally received national compensation. In addition, in the same year, the Cochrane also investigated and determined that the National Tax Action Bureau and others had committed 7 major violations, including failing the conduct through verification and investigation and failing to actively clarify the nature of the income related to the case in accordance with their authority. The story of Taijimen human rights prosecution case reminds us that protecting human rights requires a comprehensive perspective, and the importance of International Human Days is even more highlighted. This day reminds that everyone deserves basic human rights. Let us work together to build society based on respect for human rights and safeguarding cultural diversity. Through the practice of traditional justice, we can break down exacting basis and create a more just and equal future. This is our reflection on the Taijimen human rights prosecution case and our expectations for the government. The Taijimen case has not been vindicated even by 4 presidents, which means that there is still a lot of room for improvement in human rights in Taiwan. In general, Taijimen case tax-found issue has caused us to reflect on freedom of religious belief, legality, and equal treatment. We should pay attention to these issues, not only because they are related to the rights and interests for an organizations, but also because they touch on core values of human rights. The fair the treatment procedures, we can ensure that everyone gets the respect and treatment that they deserve in society. At the level of freedom of religious belief, everyone should enjoy freedom of belief and practice, which is a basic human right. The international community needs to work together to ensure that everyone can enjoy basic human rights without unreasonable violations. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Lina Chang. And thank you, for example, for your drawing some lessons from the Taijimen's sad experience about of basic human rights, because everyone deserves to enjoy his basic human rights, as you said, and that's the reason why it is important to build a society based on the respect for human rights and safeguarding cultural diversity. In this regard, transitional justice is an important element, very important element, for relations between victims of injustice and state institutions, an essential element for social reconciliation and peace at home. And this is your reflection on the Taiji persecution case and your expectations from the government, and be sure that we share your expectations. Thank you very much. And I will now give the microphone, virtual microphone, back to Stefania, who will introduce the last speaker.
Yes, the last speaker will be Respinti, Marco Respinti, and he's a journalist, and he's the director in charge of Bitter Winter magazine. Marco, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Stefania. Thank you all. We're just arriving at the final steps of our webinar of today, for today, on such an important day of observance institutionalized by the United Nations. And I take the occasion to thank the hosts and organizers of this series of webinar, and especially today's webinar, CESNUR, the Center for Studies on New Religions and Human Rights Without Frontier. It's again my responsibility and pleasure to try to draw some conclusions, cutting through different suggestions that came from the papers presented today and the very important testimonies that we just heard. And of course, I will try also to understand the whole thing, adding few elements of my own, if you allow me. By invitation of the United Nations, today the world honors the International Human Rights Day. The date, today, December the 10th, marks the anniversary, as we already said, of the proclamation of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights by the UN General Assembly in 1948, 75 years ago. The value of such a celebration goes, of course, without saying. When we honor human rights, we celebrate the human beings as carrying an indisputable value. Unfortunately, though, even if I just mentioned that the world honors Human Rights Day, this is more a hope than a fact. In many places of the world, human rights are not honored at all. This means that human beings are not honored. Human beings are often disrespected, vilified, angered, harassed, abused, violated, raped, wounded, tortured, and killed. I'm starting to suspect that the main reason behind this frequent dishonoring of human beings is the frequent ignorance of what human beings are. We live in times where people are afraid of truth, not only of speaking the truth, but of truth itself. In our times, people seem in fact happier to say what an object is not, rather than to address the distinctive qualities that make an object what it is. Any affirmation of utterance that qualifies and defines objects is regarded suspiciously and often considered dogmatic, intolerant, and chauvinistic. In this cultural climate, human beings also lose their specific substance and become a matter of perpetual redefinition. But if we lose the definition of what a human being is, it is hard to defend human beings as indisputable values. From this widespread confusion on what a human being is derives an even greater confusion on human rights. On the UN Human Rights Day, we can take the UN Universal Declaration of Human Rights as a highly valuable paradigm. In fact, while the declaration starts by immediately emphasizing the core importance of defending human rights, it does not define what human rights are, and it never does it in its whole text. In its preamble, it starts by affirming that, quote, recognition of the inherent dignity and of the equal and unalienable rights of all members of the human family is the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace in the world, end of quotes. But it does not explain what those equal and unalienable rights are. This continues for the whole length of the preamble. Then in Article 1, the declaration restates with energy and clarity that, quote, all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights, end of quote. But still the reader does not know what these rights are. Indeed, the following 29 articles of the Declaration list some rights inherent to human being, yet no clear definition or foundation of them is given. Some are also so general, if not generic, that they may have a meaning and its opposite at the same time. Stating that life and liberty, for example, are basic human rights, it is of course fundamental. However, if we do not clearly define what the rights to life and liberty are, we risk defending a notion that can also be used to justify evil wrongdoings. This is not a mere theoretical risk. No matter what the Declaration proclaims about the rights to life and liberty are denied daily by a large number of UN member states. These states, not all of them totalitarian, claim that they respect and love the Declaration, only they interpret it differently. In sum, the UN Universal Declaration of Human Rights is the most perfect and comprehensive example of the problem the world faces when human rights are proclaimed not sufficiently defined. If my argument is true, the world is then upholding a notion while ignoring its substance. We defend human rights, but we don't know how to define them. I suspect that the drafters of the UN Declaration knew this or foresaw it, and they avoided any discussion or definition on purpose, because clearer definitions would never have been accepted by all member states. One may wonder how it can be possible that human rights are so vague a concept in a time when so many national and international organizations promote them. I tend to think that the answer is contained into the question. Human beings are a mystery. Part of that mystery is that they started to appreciate values when they start losing them. This could be the case of human rights as well. The expression human rights did not always exist. It started being used in the 17th century Europe. We could even speculate on the fact that the use of the expression human rights increased proportionally to the loss of clarity on what those rights were and are, as if simply repeating the formula could fill the void. Prior to the introduction of the expression human rights, Western culture spoke of natural rights. The genealogical process leading from natural rights to human rights is an interesting subject to explore. Interestingly, That genealogy also surfaces in documents of the UN beyond the declaration. But if, again, the argument I'm proposing is meaningful, the point here is that the substitution of natural with human created a serious problem. Natural rights assume and imply the existence of a nature, in this case, the nature of human beings. In this sense, nature is defined as the normative identity that makes things as they are. So the very nature of human beings makes them what they are. It endows them with a few fundamental characteristics that can be ignored or denied only at the price of annihilating the very concept of a human being, and in the end, physically annihilating human beings as well. But if we substitute natural with human, we lose the normative identity that makes humans what they are. We may imply it or still allude to it. Over time, the notion is slowly diluted and disappears. At the end of the day, we remain with something we generically call human, but we don't know what human means. We defend human rights, but in what sense are these rights human? It is, in fact, easy to verify that our world is full of conflictual definitions of human and human beings. The central point here is that no agreed notion on human rights is possible until we gain or regain a shared notion of human being through a common reverence for human nature. I say reverence and not understanding. First, because it is not only a matter of reason, but also of will, as well as of love. Secondly, because probably human beings will never reach a full intellectual agreement on what human nature is, yet they can still regard it with awe and fear, wonder and compassion. It is here that religions, beliefs, creeds, and spiritual ways enter the scene. The gap separating different definitions of human nature can be filled only by cherishing and nurturing the core spiritual dimension of life that can unite human beings even beyond their mutual understanding of their respective philosophies and beliefs. To stop disrespect and violence, it is sufficient that each human being is convinced that a given human nature, whatever its definition is inherent in every single human being. In fact, proclaiming this truth is a main feature of Taijimen's teachings. Taijimen unites different people from every walk of life and cultural or religious background in a shared effort to go beyond definitions, not in contempt of definition, but with the aim of building a solid ground for peace, love, conscience, and respect all can share. Taijimen does not propose yet another definition of the human being, which would only contribute to the confusion, but promotes a reverence for the mystery of the untouchable human nature based on conscience. This is a grand and universally important task. The history of culture is full of examples of great human beings who did the right thing before and beyond rationally understanding all its pros and cons. In the world today, this would already be a great achievement. Respecting human beings even before understanding them. To do it, only the moral clarity and the purity of the heart, grounded in conscience, leading to acting right before thinking wrong, is required. This is the moral vision that Dr. Hong Tao-tse is proposing to his Dizzy, and indeed to the whole world. Only at that point, all the conflicting and relativistic definition of human beings and their rights, which too often cause the world to be transformed into a hell by some ideologists who promise heaven on earth, will vanish. justice will be restored, including justice for Taijimen and all those who suffer for the denial of their human rights. What Dr. Hong and Taijimen proposed to us is not a sugary happy end, but the dawn of a possible and realistic human and humane world. At least this is my understanding, and I offer it as a conclusion of our works today. Again, I do thanks all the organizers and hosts and the presenters of papers, as well as the DZ who brought their direct testimonies. And I say hello to everyone just inviting you to see our latest and last video for today. Thank you.